introduce you to our Accellos One product. I know that there are some, or at least there were planned to be, some of our existing customers in this webinar. This might look very different to what you're accustomed to from the radio beacon solution or even the older Accellos One warehouse products that you've seen in the past. We've spent an enormous amount of money over the course of the last 3 years in building out an entirely new architecture and in rebuilding, in many cases, and our existing products, and then certainly building new products around our existing products to have this complete end-to-end supply chain suite that attacks the cost-cutting areas that we've talked about within the last 40 minutes or so of this session we've covered. So let me give you a brief introduction. As you can see, the product runs in a browser, but it looks very much like a Microsoft Office kind of a look and feel. So the navigation is very much like Outlook. Simply navigate around in terms of the menu structure that you're accustomed to. It incorporates Microsoft Link if you're using Microsoft's Link tool, which is their instant messaging and unified communication product. And so I can communicate to anybody within my organization by the click of a button, and in many cases I can go back and see who was the last person to really work on or touch an individual item within the organization, and I can immediately communicate to them about that particular item. All of the modules, think of this almost like a very large cell phone. These are all individual apps, and those individual apps can be added or taken away. We've added something relatively interesting in that we've built video help into the system. And so you've got a whole series of video help that you can pull in to give you contextually information about how to run specific areas in the application. That's available not only within the menu here on something called Video Center, but if I were to go down here to our report application, is probably the one that's easiest to show this, and choose something like Partner Cross-Reference and load that particular function. You'll notice that I've got video help available to me that's context specific, and I can simply launch that video help at any point in time and run through and take a look at specific information about how to use that on the screen rather than simply in written. So we're moving our applications into the YouTube generation, so to speak, by providing the context-sensitive help you would typically find in text more in a video form that people can more easily assimilate. So the navigation is very much like you'd be familiar with Outlook. As you can see, we've got a context-sensitive ribbon line up here that runs through the application. The functions in here are very much like you'd find in a spreadsheet, so I can move columns around. I can add and delete specific columns of data into it. The system, and then I can persist my specific layout at any point in time if I choose to. One of the other nice things about the way the application works is that I can adjust the screen real estate to the way I'd like to see it. In a couple of ways. I can manipulate the screen itself. I can put screens side by side if I choose to by simply dragging and dropping, and I wind up with those screens side by side now rather than tiled the way I had them, and put them back if I choose to. I also have this thing called Workspaces, which gives me access to multiple information within the same context. And so that's an interesting way of giving you a lot of flexibility in setting up your workspace the way you choose to have it, and then persisting it the way you choose for it to be persisted. Every one of the screens has the ability to be translated. And so when we talk about localized or translated, that's not necessarily in a foreign language. It can also be in a language that's more meaningful to you. So you can change the text on the flyovers. You can change the text on a column. You can have it in multiple real languages, or you can put it into jargon, if you will, that's more appropriate for your business. You'll see us adopt this concept of something called a work center. This happens to be a shipment work center. We've also incorporated within all of the application the use of common tools. So as you go through this, you'll notice that when I click around here, the ribbon line, it changes depending upon what's available. So as I choose something like a FedEx International Economy shipment, I see a commercial invoice report that comes up. I can simply select that commercial invoice report, and for any of you who are accustomed to running Microsoft SQL Server reporting services, we've embedded that within our application. And so you've got a lot of capabilities here to manipulate the form, zoom in to segments of the screen any way you choose to output it as a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, PDF file, a web page, an image, an XML document, a comma-separated value, so on and so forth. Lots of capabilities for you from a report standpoint. And even up to and including things like customized commercial invoices or customized bills of lading that are context sensitive to who the actual carrier was or who the customer was when you originated it. You can actually create custom versions of the forms that are driven by who you've selected them for as well. Now, for those of you that happen to be running our warehouse management system today, you're probably familiar with something called Web Dispatch. Web Dispatch has been going through a relative rebranding, if you will, or kind of a genesis. So for those of you that are familiar with Web Dispatch, you're accustomed to our pivots. This is kind of the next generation of our pivots. And what we've done is we've used a heat map paradigm and allowed you to pick the kinds of specific solutions you want. You can pivot it by process step in this particular case, and this is a 3PL view, or by client. If you're more comfortable looking at it by customer and by proc step, you can generate it by customer, by proc step, once again choosing the X or Y axis. When I choose one of these lines, let's just pick any one of these. When I click, I adjust the information that underlies that on my grid as I would do in the existing product. One of the major differences is instead of drilling through and opening up multiple screens, I've got everything I need to have right there. When I choose an order, I can see the pick lines, the shipment details, all of the information from a header on that order, including addresses, instructions, extras, and UDFs, so on and so forth. And I mentioned that you have the ability to manipulate the screen. So if I don't like those two things stacked on top of one another, I've got a lot of different ways to manipulate that. I can put them this way so that they're on top of one another that way, or I can choose to say, let's actually, instead of that, let's move the grid over here and then narrow this down a little bit so I got a better view of what's going on, and I can manipulate it that way and then look at my header information and so forth. Once I've got that the way I want it, I can save the layout. The next time I come in, that's exactly the way I'm going to see it. You saw that part of the way that you gain advantage in the warehouse is through task management. One of the things that our warehousing system has not necessarily been that well known for is task management with the most recent release that's coming out. As you can see, we have a full task management system that allows you to look at picks, receipts, moves, and simply by grabbing one that's unallocated, we can drag it over to the appropriate place that we want it, either to add it to a given user. There, I can simply pull it over here and add it to that user and move on. As we talked about before, these can all be manipulated just like we saw before and persisted any way we choose to do so. Now, one of the other things that we can do, if you remember, we talked about inspecting what we expect. We can also show you our supply chain intelligence solution that gets the ability to drill into information like metrics like picked lines, picking capacity, received lines. There's multiple metrics that come with the system and the ability to add additional KPIs or key performance indicators on the fly. And then in addition, we build in a kind of an automated pivot table with our Pulse application. And so let's just eliminate all the pieces and parts here and show you how this works. We can choose to go build a report on the fly. If I want to see specific actions by month, drag that back up here before, and I want to see the quantity of those actions by month. And I can certainly look at all of the key information here in terms of the kinds of actions I've done, the months of the year. I could throw quarter in there, I could throw client in there, I could throw hour of the day, whatever the case might be. At the time I want to look at that, I can export it to a spreadsheet, or I can save it and recall it at a later point in time if I choose to. Set up the timelines in terms of the dates and times that I want to look at. See that either graphically in a chart or visually in a grid. And so I've taken and built a pivot table that's database driven rather than something where I'm pulling things into a spreadsheet. I mentioned to you before the whole notion of visibility being important. And so one of the things that our application can also do is pull in shipping information so that I've got full shipping transparency to my customer. and I can see at any particular shipment where that happens to be in its life cycle. If I choose to, let's just unpin these for a minute and take a look at a little bit bigger view of the actual map. I can see where that particular shipment happens to be, its origin, its destination. It's more significant detail about where it's going, who it's going to, contact information if I have contact information, and so forth. We also include an EDI system that's available with the application from a collaboration perspective, is all a piece of our overall supply chain suite. And so at the end of the day, when you start thinking about how can I build an end-to-end solution that drives home this supply chain value that we've talked about, to better manage my inbound logistics, to better manage my outbound logistics, to better provide visibility to my clients, to more effectively operate from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective on the floor of the warehouse, we built all those solutions into a very easy to assimilate user experience that we think takes the core strength of our warehousing solution that's been in the market for a number of years, and some of you on this webinar are already using, and takes it to the next level. We hope you agree with that.